All right, excellent. So my name is Ilya Lichtenstein. I'm the co-founder of a startup called MixStrength, and we help advertisers and people in the digital advertising industry find customers. And in general, our model, by the way, has been based a lot on predictable revenue principles. And predictable revenue is our Bible in some ways in terms of building that process. Yeah. Everyone that we hire that comes in on the non-technical side has to read that book. And we are data geeks, we are technology geeks, and so what we've done is taken a lot of those principles and tried to automate them and scale them and make it a process that we could use as a small startup with limited resources, leveraging our technology and our ability to build some of these tools to accomplish some of these things. And what we have done in the way that we built our process as a small startup, we actually don't have dedicated SDR people. Most of that SDR work is automated. It is a combination of a little bit of outsourcing, but mostly just a lot of code to generate lists of prospects, to get leads, to set up the outbound emailing, and so on. As Aaron mentioned, we don't have our salespeople do prospecting. We, every day, are pushing leads into their Salesforce. All they have to do is open up Salesforce. There are new qualified leads in there. And we don't really do a lot of manual cold calling or cold mailing. So we do send out outbound emails, which are cold, but they're not sent by people on our team. We don't have people on our team that are sitting there all day writing out the same email over and over again. We can automate all of that. And some of the results of implementing that process for us is that we have a 92% lower cost per qualified B2B lead compared to the industry average. Our cost is about $3 compared to something in the 40s on average. And we actually have increased our conversion rate to a demo of the product fourfold simply by applying some of these lead gen principles. So the biggest impact on our revenue growth, on our conversion rates, on how many trials and closes we can drive has come not from getting better at sales or selling, but just from increasing the quality of the inbound leads that come in and working very, very carefully to build the right kinds of lists. And that probably as a startup, especially for those of you in the early stages, will have the biggest impact because you don't have a lot of salespeople. There is an upper limit on how many sales conversations you can have, on how many demos you can do, on how many customers you can onboard. And so you want to make sure to be going after the most qualified ones, the ones that have the most pressing, burning need for your product. And I want to tell you exactly how we find those. The basic process for us for building lists of leads or lists of prospects is actually really, really simple. It's very straightforward, and this process can be applied to any kind of company that's doing sales. Especially B2B sales, you have a list of companies that you put together that are your ideal target customers. Then you identify who are the decision makers at those companies, who are the people that are actually going to move things forward and drive the buying process. And then you figure out their contact info, you contact them, you push them into the pipeline. That's it. All you have to do. And what I'm going to talk about today is mostly the first two pieces of that, specifically how do you get to exactly the right ones, the ones that are already ready to buy, the ones where you talk to them and you think the product basically sells itself. And the big difference in our process in how we generate lists of very, very relevant, very responsive prospects and leads is that we don't follow the typical linear process that most people use. So most people start with a broad segment of whatever they have defined are qualified or potentially qualified types of businesses that they sell. So you might think, okay, well, my product is at this price point, so therefore I want to sell to companies with at least 100 employees or something. Or maybe I want to sell only to big brands. Or I want to sell to Fortune 500, whatever, companies with a certain revenue number. And then they go to some database, they grab a list of, okay, here's a list of the Fortune 500. We're going to go through every single one, probably in alphabetical order, and we're going to just start finding the people at them and just start reaching out. And that's what most people do. And what happens when they really start embarking on that process is that their results are very, very inconsistent, unpredictable, if you will. And they might have some companies that they reach out to that respond really, really well. They send a bunch of outbound emails that convert, and you think, okay, great. I found a process. I have now email copy that I know works. It's going really well. And then you keep going through that list, and you send out a bunch more, and for whatever reason, those don't work as well. Those emails don't get a lot of responses. Those leads go cold. And you think, okay, well, guess not. I have to start from scratch. And it kind of keeps going very, very unevenly because whatever your target criteria are, usually are very broad because you want to have a big market, obviously. So it's okay, we have a list of thousands of companies that make at least 10 million in revenue, or we'll just go down the list. Even though those companies could be very, very different from each other. They could be very, very different from your ideal customers. And the process that we use instead is not going through the big list, but going laterally to companies that are very, very similar to each other and to our ideal customers. So, for example, we have a few customers that come in organically through word of mouth or maybe through marketing. We know a lot of information about those companies, not just the basic business criteria, but we know exactly what types of products they sell. We know how many people work there. We know what those people's titles are. We know what keywords they are targeting or they're ranking for. We know what kind of messaging and copy they use on their websites and landing pages. We know what their budgets are like and what their problems are like and what their sales process is like and what their buying process is like. With all this information, and then we just start expanding outward. Just start thinking, okay, what are more types of businesses that are very, very similar to these? Who are their top competitors? who are very related companies. What kinds of companies are entering into a similar space? What kinds of companies are exactly the same size as these or have the same size marketing team who are selling to marketing teams, and so on. And we just keep expanding laterally. And that process, at a high level, we have found that we just switched to doing that instead of starting, here's a list of 500 companies that are big, or here's the phone book. Instead of that, we say, well, here's a list of 5 companies that are really, really similar to the guys that we closed last week. And then after that, here's a list of 5 more that are really similar to each of those. We found that has a huge, huge impact on the scalability of our sales process, especially as a startup, because when you are going after a very, very small niche and really exhausting that niche, you can reuse a lot of the same messaging, a lot of the same marketing collateral, and so on. And we just start building these lists. We start very, very narrow. We look at a lot of our own internal first-party data. So someone signs up, we know their email, we know their social profiles. We can look at third-party data now. Okay, well, there's a company. Who are they following on Twitter, for example? If we go to LinkedIn, LinkedIn has a section that says, what are other companies that people look at? We could go to job sites. We say, okay, well, these guys are posting jobs with certain kinds of titles to solve problems that they have. Who else is posting jobs that solve these same problems? And we disqualify them very, very rapidly if it's not very, very close to our ideal customer, or the very, very similar ones. And after we have a list of companies, same thing, we find decision makers. You could start from the top down, where you go to the highest level on VP and go down. Or you could start from the bottom up, and that has actually worked better for us, where we say, well, these people are actually using our product. Who else is very, very similar to this person, their specific title, their interests, the Twitter accounts that they follow, their likes on social media, all this information. Who is most similar to them that is actually day-to-day doing the same kinds of tasks that we can reach out to at these other companies. So now we have very similar companies, and we have very similar people that are doing the same job, and you could see how then it would make sense that the same kind of pitch would perform more consistently and have the same results. You've sold once, you can keep doing it with other ones. A little more tactical things, we could do search on LinkedIn, so we can actually, most of what we do is something called X-ray search, where we do a Google search, and you can search for a keyword and type in site:linkedin.com. That gives you access to anyone's public profiles, even if they're not in your network. You can do Boolean searches on LinkedIn, where you stack keywords like and, or, and just combine them. Very, very specific titles. You can look at their tweets and see who they're retweeting, who they're following. You can look at Facebook social graph search. This is incredibly powerful for us for finding decision makers, because you can get so targeted. You can look at people's likes, you can look at their interests, their keywords, and even for finding companies, it's really, really powerful for finding very similar companies. So, for example, if I were promoting a sales conference, I might look, okay, here's a big sales conference, Dreamforce is coming up. You could search, well, where are the people who have liked this event? What companies do they work at? And you can just go through and make a list, and so on. these are just some ideas to spark your creativity. There's a lot of things you can do. You could filter companies on information about the business. You could filter companies by who their top competitors are, who look-alike companies are that are very similar. You can look at their traffic sources. Who are they advertising against? Who are they competing against? When you search for one of their keywords, who else's ads show up? And you can look at technologies and vendors that they use. There's a lot of different products that when you go to a site, it will tell you this is the specific technologies or pixels that this site uses. And we took all of these different things and we started building a bunch of internal tools to completely automate generating lists of these companies based on very, very specific filter criteria that really matches our ideal customer profile. Really quickly, I'll just give you a glimpse of what that looks like. And it's something that we started sharing with other people that are using the same kind of process. So at Mixed Strength, we track digital advertising. We have a big database of ads and advertisers. And so we can start for a keyword. For example, say Halloween is coming up. I'm selling to companies that sell Halloween costumes, for example. We built it into our product that you could enter a keyword and we see here's everyone who's been advertising on this keyword consistently. And you can do this manually yourself just by searching Google and just looking at the ads and collecting them. We automate that. We also look at related advertisers, so who else is bidding against these guys most consistently over time. And we look at the tags or pixels or scripts that these guys are using on their website. So a lot of companies have built crawlers that will just go through a list of websites and look for very specific bits of code that say these guys are using this type of product, this type of technology. I think that's everything I have time for today, so thank you very much. Please email me if you have any questions or you want to learn more.